You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts Uncle Mike Tosaw from St. Charles Wealth Management, along with Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian and Andrew the Rock Lobster Giovinazzi from OptionPit.com. If you trade options, you want to be smart about every decision. So why not choose the smartest platform for your trades? At Public.com, you can view upcoming earnings dates directly in the options chain. You can queue and execute multiple orders simultaneously. Easily view contract performance over time. And if you have a question about any stock, you can ask Alpha, their AI for investors. But want to know the smartest part of trading options on Public? Earning rebates on every single contract traded. No other platform provides options trading rebates, and they reduce your trading costs to less than $0 per trade. So, make the smart move and switch. The only options trading platform where you can earn rebates on every single contract traded. To learn more, please visit public.com/optionblock. Paid for by Public Investing. Options not suitable for all investors and carry significant risk. Full disclosures in podcast description. U.S. members only. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again. Time to rock out with a little bit of fun here on the old OB, the kickoff show here for the network. Hope you had a fun weekend. Hope it was relaxing wherever you're from. If you're beaming in from the southeast, I hope you weathered the storm quite literally out there. I know it was just unleashing torrents of rain on unexpected places. North Carolina, other places, Asheville, where we just had the OIC conference. I was just down there not too long ago. Torrential rains down in that area. So hopefully, if you're in that neck of the woods, you're doing well. Keeping the lights on, hopefully, and everything else. I get it. If you don't have time to listen to shows this week, you got other things going on. Life sometimes takes precedence. We get it out there. But hope you're doing well. And quite literally, as the tagline of the network, unfortunately, these days, staying safe out there. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as from the network that is not just going strong, but continuing to grow. The Futures Rundown, the latest addition to the network. Where do you get it? Well, of course, wherever you get the rest of our programs, including the network feed. I know for most of you already got the network, so you're like, why are you telling us about the network? I get it, but there are a surprising number of you who just pick your shows, which, again, that's your right. You can do whatever you feel like out there at the end of the day. But if you just listen to, let's say, I don't know, Crypto Rundown or TWIFO or VolViews, whatever your flavor, your poison of choice is, you're missing out on nearly a dozen other shows that all have some awesome stuff on them. So make sure you're listening to the full network. It's the easiest place to get everything. Hey, you get the whole network. You don't have to listen to everything, but it's all coming in your feed. It makes it easy to see it all, and you can pick and choose from there. Of course, you can go to our website, our mobile app, our YouTube. It's all there as well, and get the full kit and caboodle. Speaking of full kits and caboodles, we're coming up. It's September 30th. So we're coming up on the day to give away the September Pro Trading Crate. Looks like, yeah, tomorrow will be the first. So we'll probably give it away maybe on the Pro Q&A tomorrow, or maybe on Boot Camp on Wednesday. That seems to resonate pretty well for people out there. So we'll probably give it away on Wednesday. So get your name in the hat now for the final day of September out there. TheOptionsInsider.com/pro is the place to go to learn more. As we learn who's joining us on the old OB program today, let's kick things off out in the hinterlands of Chicago, where we are joined once again by the uncleist of Mike's, Mr. Uncle Mike Tosaw from St. Charles Wealth Management, a.k.a. the reigning, defending, undisputed champ of our 80s Trivia Challenge. Uncle Mike, welcome back to the show, sir. How was your weekend? Hopefully storm-free.
Yeah, we didn't have any rain and we beat Wheaton Warrenville South. We were down by 9 points with 2.5 minutes left to go. We scored. We got an onside kick. We scored again. So we came to win. The North Stars won homecoming. So that's always exciting.
Wow, look at you. Double onsides kick. Going for the jugular out there are the Uncle Mike Tosaw coached high school extraordinaires out there. So check them out on your high school sports app of choice, listeners. This is usually where I welcome on the Rock Lobster to compete in our 80s Trivia Challenge. He unfortunately has been called away to meetings down there in the Southern Volatility Mecca. So no Rock Lobster. But you know what? I know you're saying, oh man, that means no 80s Trivia Challenge. Never fear. We are here for you. We have to kick off the week in proper high style. So we'll give Uncle Mike an uninterrupted swing at the bat this week. And, you know, last week it seems like we really hit upon our great equalizer out there, and that both the Rock Lobster and Uncle Mike were equally terrible at 80s trivia in terms of 80s TV themes. It seems like that was a great equalizer. So I think we shall return to the audio daily doubles. Uncle Mike, get your button ready. You will be the lone player today, so you should have an easy chance at it. Can you name that 80s tune? Here we go. He has buzz. I will lower in the background because it's just fun to listen to while we're talking. Mr. Uncle Mike, what TV show is that from the 80s, sir?
I'll go with Magnum P.I.s.
Yes, you were paying attention last week. You probably knew what curveball I was going to throw this week because the Rock Lobster, some might say, insanely guessed Magnum P.I. for none other than Miami Vice. So I threw that same curveball this week. I was trying to level the playing field a bit. I figured Rock Lobster wouldn't guess Magnum P.I. 2 weeks in a row. That would be beyond his ability. And I wasn't sure if you would get it, but well done, sir. A full point for Uncle Mike this week in our 80s Trivia Challenge for none other than Magnum P.I. Listeners, did you get it? You remember the halcyon days of the helicopter and everything else? Rick, TC, what were their names, the side characters, all sorts of fun. Magnum, speaking of fun, listeners, let's get to some now, a little bit of the old trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the Trading Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Trading Block, the portion of the show where we break down what the heck is trading out there. And it's another one where if you kind of don't like the kind of day you're having, just wait 5 minutes. We started off modestly green to kind of mixed. And now, as we're kicking off the show proper, it seems like we have firmly ticked pretty much across the board into the red now. It's another one of these days where we start maybe a little bit stronger than we end up. We'll see. I mean, the session is still young. The day is young out there. And we're talking red. We're only talking slightly. S&P off about 0.1%. NASDAQ off about 0.1%. And everybody's favorite, the Amazon-laden Dow off about 0.33%. Ever one to buck the trend, small caps up about 1/3. So I can't say we are red across the board. We are 3/4 red here in terms of the major indices on the day. VIX cash getting a little bit firmer here to kick off the week, at least from where it was on the Thursday show last week. 1695 when we kicked off the show, so just a tick below the 17 handle. Puts it up about 1 1/3 points from where it was on the Thursday show. So looking a little bit frothier out there, a little bit juicier out there to kick off the week. Same deal for VVIX at a frothy triple digits again, 100 exactly, putting it up 10 points from where we went out on the Thursday show with the Flowmaster. So a lot to unpack. Before we do that, Mr. Uncle Mike, before we get your thoughts on the market, do you have any thoughts on that seminal 80s TV show, Magnum P.I., sir? Did you rock a Hawaiian shirt and a sweet stash in the 80s when you were like 8 years old?
Not exactly, but I watched the show a little bit. I always thought it was a really cool show. It was in Hawaii, and never could figure out who actually owned the house that Magnum lived in.
Yeah, the actual premise of the show, when you think about it, is completely bonkers. He's living with some old dude who's actually managing the house for someone else who's this mysterious voice. But then you find out at the end, spoiler alert, that Higgins was the guy all along or something like that. Why is he living with another man in this house and driving his collection of exotic automobiles? Only in the 80s would that be a setup for a PI show. But I digress, sir.
It really, yeah. And it was, and he just had his, did he ever pay his buddy TC, or did those guys ever get paid from Magnum to help him out, or would they always just help him?
Yeah, and they went on all these death-defying missions with him. They gave him the helicopter whenever he wanted. So Magnum had his run of high-end vehicles whenever he needed them at no cost to him. It was the perfect life for an 80s PI, sir.
It really was. And he'd always get his information from his buddy, the bartender, that magically just knew everything. And it was very, very 80s. It was, I kind of want to watch the show again now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. As I saw the intro going by here, I was like, I kind of need to watch a little bit of Magnum just to get that flavor for the only in the 80s show that it was. Yes.
It really was, but and he's a Tigers fan on top of all that. He puts his Detroit Tigers hat on all the time.
Nowadays, if you had a show with a younger man living with a much older, wealthier man, it would be a very different context, I think.
No doubt about that. On that note, last day of Q3, so there's the only stocks that are really doing anything on my tape. We have Apple up a little over 1.5%, and we have the stock formerly known as Facebook, Meta, up 0.75%. But other than that, there's really not a lot of excitement going on. So perhaps we're getting a little bit of window dressing with Apple and Facebook. But aside from that, we have a relatively flat market. I mean, the S&P is down 6, so really not a lot of movement there. And yeah, I think the market's just saying, you know what? We're done for the quarter today. We're just going to take the day off. We don't feel like doing anything. We're going to just play the 80s trivia game, and that's it today. That's kind of what the feel of it is today. Some things that I'm seeing that are lighting up my tape a little bit. We do have silver and gold pulling back a little bit. Silver down 1.3%, gold down roughly 0.5% on the day. So we're getting a little bit of a pullback there. Looking at the VIX, it's up 0.2% on the day. So it's really not a lot of movement there. And just looking at some of our stocks through our, through our triple income portfolio and our covered call stocks, not really seeing, I mean, Apple is in that portfolio, but really not seeing anything of any major significance. We're getting a couple little movers in there, but really it's a good day to be short premium, apparently, because whether you're short puts or short calls, because we're not getting a lot of movement. But October is coming, and I don't think that's going to be a trend that's going to continue in the coming days, weeks, and months, quite honestly. So that's what I'm seeing, which unfortunately for purpose of the show, it's not very much.
Let me ask you really quickly, since it is your kind of a quiet day out there, and we are still on the heels of the 80s trivia. Back then, Tom Selleck time, a Magnum P.I., peak Tom Selleck, peak stash days. Many people know it is a fun trivia question that he was kind of the original choice for Indiana Jones. And I think he did something else. Quigley Down Under was the movie he chose instead. And so we all know how that turned out. Where are you on the Tom Selleck as Indiana Jones, sir? Would you have been down for that? I think it would have been a good indie.
I mean, I am a Tom Selleck fan as an actor. I really like a lot of what he does. I think he does a good job in Blue Bloods. I think pretty much anything that he's done, I've maybe not everything, but a lot of what he's done, I am a fan, somewhat of a fan. But I just can't picture Indiana Jones being anybody besides Harrison Ford.
I hear you. I see. I think you actually could have done pretty well. I don't. Maybe that Quigley movie. Maybe that was a trial run of what we never could have had as Indy. But I think there's a lot of overlap. I mean, aside from the stash, there's a lot of overlap in what we get from Magnum, kind of the wisecracking kind of devil-may-care kind of character, to what we get with Indy out there. So there you go, listeners. Maybe you didn't know that. Maybe that's a new trivia fact for you. But yes, Tom Selleck was indeed the original Indy before we got Han Solo there in the gig. So intriguing stuff out there. See the nuggets you get on a quiet Monday when things aren't really lighting it up out there, listeners. You get all sorts of nuggets here on the show. Let's see what kind of nuggets we can get out here in the markets out here today, listeners. And look, some interesting names once again in our top 10. We'll get there in a second. But first, are we lighting the world on fire from an overall volume perspective? I think you can guess what I'm going to say with that one, listeners. The answer is unfortunately no. And let's kick things off as we are wont to do in VIX land. Now, we are coming to these names a few minutes earlier than we normally do on the show, so maybe there's a little bit of that to it as well. But I think even if we added another 5 or 10 minutes, I don't think we would be seeing these indexes really light the world on fire. Let's start in VIX land. 285 is where we're hanging out in VIX right now. You know, of course, of late we've seen much more active days, even by this time of the session out there. So 285. Not much to speak of. The ADV, though, continuing to inch north, 946. So we're threatening 1 million contracts a day again in VIX land, which, again, if you know anything about the seasonality of VIX, we are past the dog days of summer, which are supposed to be the really quiet period in VIX. This year, not so much. August was a banger, over 1 billion contracts on the tape. We're about to get the numbers for September, so we'll see tomorrow how September is holding up from a volume perspective. Right now, VIX options not exactly lighting the world on fire. The big dog is 23,000 of the OCC40s, followed by 20,000 of the OCC22. So maybe we have some vertical action. And total for the day right now, 285,000 contracts. I'm looking here to see if those went up. They went up at the same time. They didn't go up marked to spread, but 10,500 of the OCC2240 vertical did go up. Looks like paper buying. Again, there's a lot of OI on both, so they could be taking it off. Looks like they traded it for about 65 cents. So are you a buyer? OCC2240, 65 cents. Listeners, you like that? Is that a good do to you? That's what's going up today. That's kind of it in VIX land out there. SPY, speaking of light paper, 3.5 million contracts on the tape in SPY land right now. So again, we're coming to it a little early, but usually we expected at least 4 1/3. So not a heck of a lot going up today in SPY land at all. In fact, let's get an exact up-to-the-minute number, listeners, just so you don't accuse me of stacking the tape here. You know what? 3.51. So there we go. Lighting the world on fire in SPY. I tried to give as much time as I could, listeners. The ADV, 7.89 million. Doesn't seem like we're going to get there today. But again, the last hour of the day is kind of its own beast these days anyway, so we'll see what happens then. The S also looking pretty light for this time of day, 1.35 million. Again, I will re-rack it right now, listeners, so we get the exact number. And you know what? It's a whopping 1.36. So the S lighting the world on fire as well. Again, we usually expect about 1.75 million at this time of the show, or pretty close to it. So the S looking like a snooze fest out there today as well. The ADV, 2.99 million, so just a tick under 3. Don't think we're getting there today as well. Small caps. They were the one thing bucking the trend today. Are they bucking the volume trend today as well? The answer, unfortunately, is no. 513,000 contracts on the tape for small caps. The ADV about 1.37 million, so they have a ways to go to get to their ADV. Again, doesn't seem like they're going to get there. Even the Qs kind of languishing today. Usually we expect them around 2.25 million. This time of the show, 2.3 million. 1.99 million is not even 2 million contracts, listeners. So, yeah, quiet day. Again, the Qs are a weird beast. The ADV is 3.87 million, so mathematically they are about halfway there. But we know the way the Qs tend to play. They kind of tend to get their volume early and then kind of coast the rest of the day volume-wise. So they're this light already. Doesn't seem they're going to get there, but you never know out there. Let's go out to single names. And you know what? We had to rack these a little bit earlier today, so I would say this volume for when we actually had to collate this data is actually not as unimpressive as I expected. How's that for damning it with faint praise, listeners? We're at 191,000 contract, which is not nothing. But then again, you know, it's not dog days of summer volume either. It's not 150, 160,000. Of course, last week we were at pretty much double that this time of the show. So it was a hot day last Thursday. Today, not so much, but closing in on 200K. That is respectable. I'm sure if I re-racked that right now, we might be a little bit closer to that number. Let's see. Oh, no, whopping 192. So we added 1,000 more. Close enough. 192 is what it cost us to break into our top 10 right now. That gets us to our old pal GameStop. Looking a little bit more robust today, taking the upswing, up about 92 cents or about 4%, trading close to 23.5 right now, 23.40. Interesting stuff out there is Roaring Kitty sitting back up out there again. Dogs and cats living together. More buyers than sellers. Whatever's driving it up out there today, listeners. With today's move, that puts GameStop up 40% year to date, or about 670. So they were kind of languishing for a while. Seemed like most of the interest, most of the bloom had come off the rose, and maybe at least today they're looking a little bit more active today. Good for number 10, 192. You know, we're in kind of rarefied air, maybe in between earnings cycles, when we're starting to see GameStop peek its head back into the top 10 out there. On number 9, everything old is new again these days, listeners. No, it's not Intel. You might be assuming that. But it is Micron. Good old MU, number 9, 216,000 contracts. Micron taking it on the chin today, 103 and about a half, off about $4 or nearly 4%. So they are kind of coming for Micron. Lest you get concerned for Micron shareholders, the stock was 82 and a third at the beginning of the year. So they're still up about 25% on the year, even with today's sell-off. In fact, not that long ago, just a couple of weeks ago, they were $87. So they've had a nice pop out here just in the last couple of weeks. So if they have a little bit of bloom to give back off the rose today, they're still looking pretty good. Micron, number 9, 216,000. Now, number 8 is kind of where the little bit of a trend we've been talking about of late. China. It's kind of all or nothing with China. Either we're all in on China or we're all out on China. Last week, it seemed like everybody was all in. Seems like that partay is continuing again today. We got a lot of Chinese names popping into our top 10 today, including number 8, our old pal JD.com, a.k.a. JD. Once again, going into the realm of Chinese e-commerce. 40 and a half is where it's trading right now, up 60 cents or about 1.5%. Good for number 8 today, 233,000 contracts. If you want more China, just stay tuned. Like, for example, number 7, our old pal Pinduoduo, a.k.a. PDD, 135.43, up about a nickel today. So looks like they were feeling a lot more of their oats earlier. They have had quite the range already today. Their low was 133 and a quarter. The high was 142.99, so almost a $10 range, about $9.75 range on the day. So PDD doing a lot of living today, but giving a lot of that back now. Almost at their low for the day, not quite. 133 and a quarter was their low, trading right around 135 right now. Either way, good for number 7, 294,000 contracts. A hot day out there in China. Is that continuing? I guess we'll find out, listeners. It's not continuing at number 6. Now we're going out to the Amazonians. 185 and 3/4, off about 2 1/4, or about 1.2% out there on the day. So kind of a light day for good old Amazonians out there, listeners. All right, let's go to number 5. Now we are back to China, listeners. It's everyone's favorite. Maybe it's your least favorite. I don't know. It's Alibaba. It's kind of, for many people, the vanguard of the Chinese wave, and certainly the vanguard of the Chinese online e-commerce wave. 107, about 20, off about 15 cents right now. This is another one that's done a lot of living already. Got up to about 112 and a quarter today, and the low was 107 and a third. Actually, obviously, that's not the low anymore because we're at 107.16, so this data needs to be updated. So we are at the low right now for the day. So giving up the ghost, off about $5 from the high. So all the love that Chinese names had earlier in the session does seem to be fading out there. Either way, Baba number 5, 562,000 contracts. On number 4, it's the fruit company. They are saying the hell with China. We're off to the races today. Number 4, Apple, 677,000 contracts. 231 and 3/4, up nearly $4 or 1 3/4%. What is driving them? You know, the only thing I'm seeing is that they're pulling out of the open AI funding round. That usually, if you're not investing in AI, is usually a bad thing in today's market, but apparently that translates to upside, or at the end of the day, more buyers than sellers, kid. Either way, number 4, Apple, 677,000 contracts. in Apple today. Number 3, back to China we go. You thought we were done with China, didn't you? But no. China sneaking back in was going back to our old pal NEO. Launched into the top of the charts today. Number 3, 762,000 contracts. NEO. My goodness, 686, up about a third of a buck today. Let's see, their range was 771, their low was 682, so a decent range, about 91 cents, but is that enough to drive all this paper? Let's go see. Listen, year to date, they are still off $1.50 or about 18.5%. If you go back a full calendar year, they're off about 22%. So let's see, what are folks up to? Inquiring minds want to know, listeners, what are folks up to out there today in good old NEO? It's like the big dog was 48,000 of the OC 8s, 8-0s. So, no, not even monthly OC. These are expiring on the 4th. So expiring this week. So weekly 8 calls, 48,000 of those bad boys. And we were threatening 8, 7 3/4. These look like these might be a bit of an ouchie, listeners. 34 cents they traded. 44 cents they traded as high as. Wow. Ooh. That might leave a mark. Now, some of these look like they might have been overwritten, so we could hope. A surprisingly tight market, 44 at 45, so maybe they parked a 44-cent bid. Either way, they traded about 44 cents. That would seem like they might be leaving a mark, unless you had the courage to overwrite them when the stock was about 760, in which case you're looking all right now. But man, NEO, 762,000 contracts on the tape for NEO. That is a heck of a lot of paper for NEO. Right behind it, we have the 7 puts. So there's some put action today, also expiring this week, going up 41,000 times. Like they traded 40 cents, 45 cents. Those are looking a little better. I mean, there's still a heck of a lot of juice to pay for those puts that are going away this week. 133 vol, if you are curious, listeners. When the stock was, let's see. The stock was exactly $7. So, I mean, they're looking all right now. Maybe they get the heck out of Dodge on these puts. But yeah, man, a lot of living. 8 calls and 7 puts, all lighting it up for around 40 cents in the span of a few minutes of each other. You know, the stock is whipsawing all over the place when that is the case. Either way, number 3, NEO. 762,000 contracts. My goodness. You know what number 2 and number 1 are, listeners? Number 2, it's Tesla. Day that ends in Y. What's happening? It's off about $2, or about 0.75%. Trading 258 and about a half right now. It's had a range of 264.86 to the upside, 256.81 to the downside. So done a lot of living. Over $8 range today. That all translates to 900,000 contracts. So actually a little bit light on the paper front for Tesla today. Same deal with the big dog today, NVIDIA. NVIDIA putting up enough paper to usually barely make the number 2 spot, just a little bit more than what Tesla normally does. 1.66 million contracts on the tape for NVIDIA right now. Trading 120.12, off about $1.28 or a little over 1%. They've had a range of a little over $3 on the day as well. So a lot of whipsawing intraday, which is kind of the norm these days, but overall translating into a pretty light top 10, including the big dog today only coming in at 1.66 million. Haven't seen things that light out there in a while. Speaking of seeing things pretty light, it's pretty light on the earnings front as we are obviously waiting to re-rack for the next cycle. Nonetheless, there are still some names popping off right now. We had Carnival before the bell today, listeners, if you are intrigued. And luckily for you, because we like you folks, we have numbers from our pal, Mr. Matt, and them, his team. A little earnings move results report for you for our friends over there at Carnival. Carnival, you know you love them, maybe you hate them. Ticker symbol CCL. They were $18.50 going into their announcement. They were pricing in 9%. That's a fair amount of juice for Carnival. You know, in the past of this cycle, more vol has been the answer. Is that the case in Carnival? Right now, the answer seems to be no. They're hanging out at about $18 exactly, off about 50 cents. So that puts them down about a little bit less than 3% right now. So underperforming that 9% straddle right now. So they were pricing in a heck of a lot of juice here. They beat estimates. Downbeat net yields outlook offsets their record revenue. So stock's still taking a little bit of a hit, but nowhere near what they were pricing in out there. So apparently for today, at least, premium sellers winning the day. Tomorrow, hopefully you're really excited about McCormick because that's popping off before the bell. You got Nike after the bell, so there still are some names you folks know and love and do trade. Conagra on Wednesday before the bell, and good old Levi's. How much jeans vol is there right now? I guess we'll find out after the bell on Wednesday. Thursday, everyone's favorite, and Uncle Mike's favorite, it's Constellation Brands popping off before the bell. And then we're kind of really getting into the dregs until we can officially re-rack for next cycle. Speaking of some of these names popping off this week, let's hit a couple of them right now. Let's go out to Nike there tomorrow after the bell. 89.44 is where they were trading when we ran this report. Again, you can check all this data for yourselves because we like you completely for free. TheOptionsInsider.com. Click on the Options News and Articles tab, and you're off to the races from there. They've been pricing in $7.42. So that's what they've been moving in the past. And this cycle, they're pricing in $5.85. So taking about $1.60 off the top. So, I guess they didn't get the memo that more vol is better this cycle out here. Well, apparently it's not the case in Nike. What about jeans vol? Is there a lot more jeans vol on the docket? Let's find out. Nike, second after the bell. 21.65 is where they were trading when we ran this report. They were pricing in $1.50, actually $1.53. And in the past, they've moved to $1.65. So a little bit off the top for Levi as well. That's interesting because it does kind of buck the trend of what we've been seeing out there for a while. Less jeans vol, listeners, are you down for that? Apparently, the market is. We'll find out more by our next show on Thursday. Looking at the season right now, we are hanging out at a pretty lofty 124%, listeners. So that translates to this cycle being quite the banger. Week 1, 121%. Week 2, 149%. I mean, that might be the most active week we've ever seen. I'll have to go back and check to make sure. Week 3, 138%. Week 4, a comparatively paltry 105%. And Matt and his team are always updating these numbers. So week 5 got updated. It was 98%. It is now up to 102%. So we are now officially north of 100% every week this cycle, which means, buy and vol was the winner. And then week 6 coming in at a banging 137%. All that averages out to a whopping 124%. So about a month and change ago, we asked you folks, do you think we're going to beat our long-term average right now of 113%, which is already ridiculously lofty? Most of you, I think around 3/4, said yes. You were right, because 124% is a banger by any stretch of the imagination. I don't know how much more frothy we can get from an earnings vol perspective. But I think our long-term average, already pretty lofty, is going to be going up even more. We'll find out at the start of next cycle, listeners. That it is time to start the next segment. It is time to get weird. It is time to get wild. It is time for the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by TheOptionsInsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, everybody, let's get weird. Let's get wild. Let's get a little crazy. If we wanted to, we could go back to Beak, a.k.a. BEKE. We were talking about them last week, I believe, on Oddities. They got some size call overrides. But you know what, listeners? Let's just skip right past that. Let's go to ATIGR. How does that sound? A little bit sexier out there. A.k.a. Up FinTech Holding Limited. Ticker symbol Tiger, TIGR. You know it. You love it. Yeah, of course, it's a Chinese name. It's ATIGR Up. ATIGR Up. Say that 5 times fast. Coming at you out of Beijing. 540 today, up 82 cents or almost 18%. So they are popping hard today, feeling just the continued Chinese euphoria out there. If you're wondering, listeners, they are a brokerage firm. According to them, a well-known online broker focusing on global investors. So there you go, listeners. Very well-known out there. Tiger Up. 540, up 33 cents over the course of the past year as well. But the real run has been just over the last couple of weeks. On September 13th, it was about 340. And then since then, it has just been on the rampage, almost straight up to 540, where you find it right now. So $2 on the top. That's not bad when you're starting at $3.40, listeners. The rest of the year has kind of been a wash. I mean, it's up 33 cents on the year, but most of that is because of this latest run. Before that, it was down quite a bit on the year. It was 508 a year ago, so 342 was looking pretty rough on the year, and then this latest upswing in all things China has really just lifted this name out here. So again, the Chinese names, we talked about them before so many times, going back to options, oddities, and our EDU saga from years ago. And, if the government's on and if they like whatever you're doing, then that name is off to the races. If they don't like it, it's dead. Very binary. There's no middle ground. And clearly everyone's liking what Up FinTech Holding Limited is up to right now, aka Tiger. I have a feeling, looking at this chart, we're probably going to see a boatload of calls out here today. And that appears to be the case, Mr. Uncle Mike. Looking at what our Eye of Sauron found out here today, looks like there's quite the palooza of calls in Tiger going up today, which I think you could probably reasonably intuit out there, listeners. What caught our eye first was a big block, nearly 5,000 of the Jan 6s. So they're buying themselves some time. Usually with these types of trades, we see people going out to like what we just talked about, the October 4th expiring, options and things like that. Nope. None of that here in Tiger. They're buying themselves a little bit of time, which is good because they're spending some cash on these bad boys. 4,970 of the Jan 6s. They came in and said, Jan 6s, how are they? They got 90 cents at $1, which is decently tight for a name that's ripping its face off today. And they said, fine, we'll pay $1. 4,970 times. At the time, the stock was pretty much at its 52-week high of 581. It got up as high today as 609, so they didn't quite buy the high, but they came pretty darn close. The stock has obviously retreated off that level now, down to 543. So if the Rock Lobster was here, he'd be saying they failed his first sniff test of the stock has moved against him. These calls are probably offered lower right now. I can go see where they're trading right now. But Mr. Uncle Mike, are you a fan of all things Tiger? And what are your thoughts of these Jan 6s for a whopping $1, sir?
Yeah, I don't know if I'd want to pay that kind of money for it. I do like the name Tiger, although not as much as Wolf Speed, but I do like the name Tiger.
I don't know if anything will ever beat Wolf Speed in the annals of this show. That brought all the smiles to my face, sir.
It really did. I mean, it's right up there with Eagle Fang Karate. But with that, no, I think that that's a little bit too rich for my blood in terms of what I would do. And I don't know if I'd want to be a seller of it, because if something has that much juice in it, it probably has that much juice in it for a reason. So I don't think this is something that I'd want to touch. Just because it's a little too scary, not scary. Well, I guess, yeah, technically is scary, but a little bit too volatile for my tastes. But if you want to do something in this stock, then maybe buy the 6 and maybe sell the 7. That's probably what I would look to do if I were to play in it. But for the time being, that's a lot of money for a stock that's that cheap in value.
Yeah, $1 when the stock's already 581. You're right. That's a good thing the Viceroy is not here. He would take deep offense at shelling out such a rich percentage of the stock for an option here, listeners. Yeah, looking right now, looks like they were 65 at 80 not too long ago. So, and the stock was higher then. So, yeah, you could definitely buy more of these if you are so inclined. If you want this trade for probably 20 cents cheaper right now. So there you go. Instant savings. Look how much money we saved you, listeners. So if you are so inclined, you want to get in on the Tiger. Again, that's a lot to shell out for a name that is already, the bloom is coming off the rose intraday. Again, these are very whim-driven names, like the whim of the Chinese government in particular. So as long as the winds are blowing in your favor, yeah, these calls could work out all day long. The second the worm turns, and it could turn on a dime. Go back and look at our EDU saga on options oddities from a few years ago. Nothing exemplifies that more. Both the Rock Lobster and I laughing, saying, oh, how much are they paying us for these 2 half puts with very little time to go? Sold to you. What does his name do? Who knows? Who cares? Let's sell them. I think the puts were ridiculous. 60 cents, something like that. Turns out that there was a reason why they were bid that much. We ended up making a good trade out of it, and it gave us fodder for many months worth of shows, and we made money on the deal at the end of the day, trading in and out in the stock and writing calls and all kinds of fun. It became quite the lesson. But That one was an interesting education, pun intended, in EDU about how quickly the worm can turn in these Chinese names when the government just decides, nope, sorry, we're yanking the rug out from under you. By the way, if you wanted something a little bit nearer dated to fixate on, the OC8s were also printing around that same time. Looks like about 15 minutes later or so, they printed for 15 cents, 3,809 times. So these were a dime at 15. The stock was even higher. These people might have very close to bought the high. They paid 15 cents when the stock was $5.96. So all I can say is at least they didn't pay a buck. They only paid 15 cents. It seems like those are going the way. I mean, eight by October expiration. Again, anything is possible in these insane Chinese names, but yeah, that's looking kind of rough, I should say. I have a feeling you can probably get all you want for probably a nickel right now, or pretty close to it, if you were so inclined to come in for the 8s. Again, 8, we already thought 7 was, or 6, I should say, was a bridge too far. 8, at least they have till Jan on the 6s. Those are rough. So yeah, people are getting run over right now in Tiger, listeners. Again, the Chinese worm could turn at any moment, and all of a sudden these could be hot again, and they could all be laughing all the way to the bank. So we'll keep an eye on these, but not looking great right now. Let's keep the theme alive, though, listeners. Cheap Chinese ADRs that are just hot. How about that? How's that sound, listeners? And also newcomers to the network. That's always fun as well. Let's go out to your other new favorite, Lufax Holding Limited. Another ADR, ticker symbol LU, L-U. Trading $3.48 right now. Up about a dime. Today they had a range of 375 on the upside, 342 on the downside. So obviously they're hanging out close to the bottom of their range. On the year, they got as low as $2. And that was pretty much back in June 4th. They hit $2 and then bounced off it. And then, of course, they weren't that far above it back just a few weeks ago. On September 11th, they were trading $2.19. So they've been caught up in this recent wave of Chinese euphoria as well, trading $3.48. So if you were long China kind of across the board lately, listeners, you've been doing all right, especially in e-commerce or some of these other online names like brokers and others. You've been doing all right, and including Lufax Holdings Limited. Let's see, what did our Eye of Sauron find out here? Kind of a similar vein, listeners, keeping it a little bit closer in terms of duration, though. Someone came in today and they said, "Ach, 4.5s, how are they?" These markets are great. I love these. If I could have made markets like this back as a market maker, maybe I would have still be a market maker. They gave them no bid. They said, "We have no bid for these." The stock was $3.65. They said, "We can't possibly show a bid for the OC 4.5s, but we'll offer them at 15 cents. You can buy all you want, but we will not suffer a bid for these at all." So no bid at 15 cents. Again, it is Lou at the end of the day, so it makes a little bit of sense. You should always show something for a bid. But I digress. That's the old market maker in me coming out. No bid at 15, this customer said, and I think they knew what the customer wanted anyway. I don't think they were coming to sell them. They probably should have been nickel at 20. They probably would have got filled at 20. But the customer said, "Okay, fine, I'll buy them for 15 cents 2,000 times." The stock was $3.65, so a little bit higher than it is right now. And another one where they're kind of wearing it a little bit intraday. They're playing a little bit closer to the fire, both in terms of strike and in terms of expiration. There are earnings, but not within the scope of these options. Earnings are on November 11th. So I don't know, Uncle Mike, does this float your boat anymore? Are you more a fan of the Lou OC 4.5s or 15 cents than you were of the Tiger Jan 6s for $1 or less, sir? Where you fall on these?
I would say I'm less not of a fan, because I don't want to say that I'm more of a fan, if that makes any sense at all. I typically shy away from stocks that cheap in general. And if I were to delve into that land of stocks that cheap, I'm with the Viceroy. Just buy the stock. I mean, it's just you're that cheap. So I think if I had to pick between the two, I would rather pick Lou, but 15 cents is a whole lot less than $1 if you're going to do some type of speculation in some way, shape, or form. And 15 cents is still a decent amount of premium in general with what you're getting from it. But Not my taste. This is still a little bit light for me on the pricing side of it.
Yeah, I'd be no bid on these. I'd be with the market maker. No bid. I refuse to show a bid at 15 cents. You like these, listeners? OC 4.5 for 15 cents. Hit us up. Let us know. Speaking of letting us know, it is time for Uncle Mike to let us know what he has on the docket for us this week. It is time for the strategy block.
It's time to dispense options, wit, wisdom, and education. It's time for the strategy block.
All right, Uncle Mike, the floor is yours. You can proceed to dispense your wisdom on how you prefer to buy far out of the money, expensive calls on very cheap Chinese ADRs. Go.
Oh, no, I think I will not. So with that, what I do want to talk about today is using the VIX to hedge on your S&P stock holdings or just any market-based stock holdings in general. And so many, many years ago, I remember when VIX options first came out. Yes, I've been in the business that long, and yes, I am that old. And I remember it was the coolest idea. I was working at Options Express at the time because I remember thinking, where else but America can you buy volatility or sell volatility on volatility? This is amazing. And it was the neatest thing. And so, of course, the VIX contract has become a big success over the years. A lot of people trade it. It's one of the CBOE's flagship contracts that they trade. And it's really become a big deal. If you don't believe me, just ask the rock lobster and the greasy meatball. With that, the concept of the VIX in a lot of ways is that there can be an inverse move in the VIX compared to the S&P 500. So in other words, if the S&P goes down, the VIX goes up and vice versa. And so through the years, a lot of talk has come out about, well, instead of hedging your S&P stock holdings or your S&Ps or whatever the case may be with buying puts on the SPX or the E-mini or whatever product you want to use, why not just buy calls on the VIX? And so first off, why would you do that? Well, conceptually, if you're right, you will get more bang for your buck on the calls on the VIX, meaning that you'll get such a large move on the VIX if the S&P goes down, that the move that you get on the VIX means that you're not going to have to buy as many, or you won't have to pay as much premium for the calls on the VIX that you would have for the puts on the SPY or SPX or whatever, and you'll still get the same amount of money you can use as your hedge. Well, theoretically, that works really well. Theoretically. Here's the problem. Now, first off, I want to just say full disclosure, I'm not talking about like a trading pairing strategy. If you want to do that, that's fine. That's good. And there's a lot of ways to make money doing that. The boys at the Option Pit do things like that. I'm not talking about what they do. What I'm talking about is your nest egg, your real money, the money that you're going to want for retirement someday. I would advise against doing such a thing. If you want to use hedged equity as an asset class, meaning you want to have some type of protection against your portfolio, at least with a section of your portfolio, I would advise against using VIX calls for that particular purpose. A couple of reasons for that. The first one is that, number one, you're not going to necessarily get an inverse move. There's plenty of times on this show, I've even brought up probably through the years, at least once or twice a year, that, oh, the VIX is down and the S&P is down, or the VIX is up and the S&P is up, or whatever the case may be, to where you're not getting what you want. It does happen. It doesn't always have an inverse relationship. So that's the first reason. Second reason is that ultimately that when the VIX goes down, when the VIX increases, it increases a lot, or it can, but it doesn't necessarily stay up there. If you look at the spikes in the VIX through the years, you won't see them staying up there a lot very often. So in other words, if you are using calls on the VIX to hedge your S&P positions, then you better be able to have your limit order in or be able to get out of it when it gets to the price point with which you want. Now that adds another layer to it. What price point do you actually want? You need to have that figured out as well. So with that being said, I believe the VIX is more of a trading instrument as opposed to a hedging instrument. Now, I'm going to be doing a webinar on that. And for those of you live listeners, the webinar is going to be a half hour after this show. Go to adaptive-investments.com to sign up for the webinar. And we'll be talking on that a little bit more in roughly 45 minutes. And that is my strategy block for today.
All right, everybody. Now it's time for us to keep on rolling and go around the block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Around the Block, the portion of the show where we tell you what we're keeping an eye on until our next episode here for the old OB on Thursday. We also pay off some of our fun questions of the week / flash polls. Last week, we had a couple of questions for you, an actual official question of the week, and then a silly one that just came to us during our show last week. I'm laughing about it already. First, our actual question of the week last week, we said, hey, after months of waiting, SEC finally sneaking in their approval for Bitcoin options on Friday, right after the end of STA. So right after I turned off my mics down at STA, asking everybody about Bitcoin options, the SEC approves them. So thanks for that, SEC. Of course, we still don't have them in our hot little hands, but we asked you folks, do you plan to trade IBIT options when they are listed? And not surprisingly, 63%, so about 2/3 of you said, heck yes. The Uncle Mike contingent getting in there, 31% saying, hell no. So interesting. That ticked up. That was pretty low. And I guess like some Uncle Mikers got in right under the wire. And then 5.3% saying you prefer some other products like your BitOs and your BitXs and many other flavors of crypto derivatives out there. We also asked you yesterday, or I should say last week during the show, because it was so ridiculous. Wolf Speed, what Uncle Mike was just talking about, AKA the Wolf, my new favorite ticker of all time. We asked you, quite simply, is Wolf Speed, AKA the Wolf, the best name for a company ever? Obviously, the answer is heck yes, and you folks went with it. 71.4% said heck yes, it is the best name for a company of all time. Uncle Mike, how can you disagree? What is better than Wolf Speed, sir?
I mean, the Options Insider, St. Charles Wealth Management. Okay. I mean, those are good, but man,
you're striking
Wolf Speed's
close
pretty
to
good
home with those. But yeah, Wolf Speed is pretty legit. We had a listener write in about what Wolf Speed actually is. I forgot who said it. Let me look if I can find it really quickly, because I hate to give them a short shrift and miss them here. I think it was one of our long timers. Let me just look really quickly, listeners. Oh yeah, it was our old pal BZ Tokyo 7270 on YouTube. He said, I'd be thinking, I'm guessing he had autocorrect issue, I'd be thinking you guys old enough to remember the original LED company Cree. Oh, that somehow became Wolf Speed, by the way. Another useless tidbit. Well, thank you for that useless. So this is Cree. That's what Wolf Speed is. It's the old Cree lighting company. Wow. Okay. That makes even less sense now that they are Wolf Speed, which makes it better at the end of the day. So thank you. I love our listeners know all things. That's why I say you're the ultimate arbiters at the end of the day, listeners. And apparently Wolf Speed was Cree. If that's the case, if I had to choose between Cree and Wolf Speed, yeah, I'm going Wolf Speed all day long because it's just that absurd, listeners. Right now, our question of the week right now, listeners, it should say it's up Uncle Mike's alley. Say, hey, the election is looming. Quite simply, very straightforward. What is your trading plan going through the election right now through November 4th? And if you have an alternate suggestion, you folks are not shy, hit us up, as BZ Tokyo showed us. Quite simply, gave you 4 choices right now. You're going to stay long, kind of just stay the course through the election, see what happens. Or he's, saying, it's a little bit too frothy for me, I'm going to get flat or maybe go to cash. Or you're going to do the opposite. You're going to get short this market, maybe start hedging your portfolio kind of aggressively. Or maybe you're going to just say, the heck with all this macro noise. I'm just going to kind of stay small and just do some intraday trades, maybe some 0-day, and that's it. Mr. Uncle Michael, what is your thought? And then B, what do you think our audience is voting for right now?
I think the audience is going to trim a little bit. And what I'm doing is I'm looking to do more, at least at this point. I haven't put anything on as of yet, but I am looking and exploring doing more hedging. So when the VIX is still in the teens, whether I'm looking to do November, December, January, that's a whole nother story. But I'm looking to do that, but I think the audience is trimming.
Let's find out, listeners. And right now, it just went live a few minutes ago, listeners. So you'll have a different story when we come back to it on the Thursday show. Trading small / intraday only, nearly half of you saying you're keeping things small right now. I get that. Kind of that could also be in conjunction with kind of maybe going to cash a bit and just trading small on what you have. That could make some sense. Or and also about 25% each for just staying the course, staying long, and getting flat / going to cash. So as I kind of expected, you folks are all over the place. Get over there at options. Again, it just went live a few minutes ago. Make your voice heard, listeners. And Uncle Mike, if folks want to make their voice heard to you, where should they go? What should they do?
Check out my website, stcharleswealth.com. If you are a listener and would like to work with a financial advisor who delves in the options space, if you want to check out my webinar, 1:30 Chicago time on Monday, adaptive-investments.com. Would love to have you. And it'll be recorded if you can't make the live one. And follow me on Twitter, at Mike Tosaw, Tosaw. I try to put out a lot of content.
Follow the man on Twitter over there as well. And while you're searching for fun things to do online, head on over to public.com/optionblock. Yes, an easy way to support the show, listeners. They've created a URL just for listeners of this show because they love you folks so much, because they're having such a good time hearing your feedback, letting you folks come in and kick the tires on their brand new options platform. Try the rebate for yourselves. See if you like it. Hey, they want your feedback, so tell them what you're liking about their platform, and maybe tell them what you'd like to see them add, because guess what? Maybe they'll add it. That's the best part. Responsiveness at the end of the day. And the rebate's pretty cool as well. It costs you nothing to go over there, unless you open an account, of course, and just say, hey, you're coming from the option block. All you have to do is go to that URL, public.com/optionblock, the place to go to keep the show coming at you a couple of times a week like it has been for well over a decade at this point. Speaking of things coming at you, we're not done yet for today, not by a long shot, listeners. I'll be back in a little bit, about an hour, with our pal, Mr. Greg Magadini, talking about Uncle Mike's favorite thing, all things crypto. We haven't talked to Greg since the Bitcoin options were approved, so I have a feeling he'll have some thoughts on that. He loves all the esoteric names like your BitXs and everything else, so going to be going deep into the weeds of some crypto vol and term structure and skew and everything else. That's coming up in about an hour on the live. If you're listening after the fact, like you should all be on the network, then of course, just hit next on your device of choice, listeners, and then you too will be off to the races and all that. Back again tomorrow for a double dose of action, because the producers think my voice is fully healed, apparently, because I've got not just a pro Q&A tomorrow coming up, with some weird dude. I think his name is something Mike. I don't know what his last name is. I'll have to go figure it out. But some Mike guy, I think, is joining us tomorrow on the Pro Q&A. And then after that, I'll be back with our pal, Mr. Matt from ORAS, to talk all things advisors and options. So a doubleheader tomorrow. Wednesday, of course, our newest doubleheader to the game. Of course, our old pal, Options Bootcamp. You all know it. You all love it, with Mr. Dan. And then I'll be back with another special guest to hold court in the world of futures on the Futures Rundown, the newest addition to the network. Listeners should be checking it out. And then we're back again, of course, on Thursday for episode 2 of the Option Block. Stay safe out there, everybody.
If you trade options, you want to be smart about every decision. So why not choose the smartest platform for your trades? At public.com, you can view upcoming earnings dates directly in the options chain. You can queue and execute multiple orders simultaneously. Easily view contract performance over time. And if you have a question about any stock, you can ask Alpha, their AI for investors. But want to know the smartest part of trading options on Public? Earning rebates on every single contract traded. No other platform provides options trading rebates, and they reduce your trading costs to less than $0 per trade. So, make the smart move and switch. The only options trading platform where you can earn rebates on every single contract traded. To learn more, please visit public.com/optionblock. Paid for by Public Investing. Options not suitable for all investors and carry significant risk. Full disclosures in podcast description. U.S. members only. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.